All right, so one of the perks of doing an EV swap and no longer having a transmission or exhaust and just dropping a drive unit in between your rear wheels is now you have a wide open transmission tunnel for your cables, your coolant, and even some components. We've got to run some coolant hoses. That's going to start with our initial pump just behind our front battery box. It's going to run the coolant all the way back to this rear battery box that's holding some of our batteries. It's going to run over to our charger DC-DC, and then it's going to go run right back to the front where the radiator and reservoir are. Alright, so these 3/4 inch hoses went in pretty easily. We went ahead and, without crimping, just put this on our initial pump for this ESS coolant loop. And we got it nice and gradually going up here. This is gonna come back. One of these is gonna go to the end of the rear box, and this one's gonna tee to the output of that. They're gonna join up and they're gonna go back to that onboard charger to continue the loop. Just kind of mirroring, this is the high voltage cables. Just on the other side, we got our coolant tubes. So now we're gonna go ahead and mount the fuse and relay panel for the HV system. And we're actually gonna mount it right here behind the front seat. There's a nice body panel that we're gonna cut our fuse and relay panel into. The wires are gonna be able to drop down right on top of our back box, meet up with the bulkhead connector out of the back of the box, and then run to the front to our gas pedal, to our drive selector, to our key switch ignition, everything that's gonna be powered or signal up there. So this is the panel that we're gonna go ahead and cut our fuse and relay panel into. This body itself is actually gonna sit behind, and this kind of red grommet, that's about the shape that we're gonna go ahead and cut into this panel. Where this is gonna go is just right about here. And then we'll go ahead and drill our hole down into the underside of the car. So we went ahead and got this cut in. I was really conservative on the initial cuts with this air tool saw, but you know what, it fits really nice and tight. You know, actually the locks on the lid are actually holding it in place without me having to do the bolt holes just yet. But we get a really nice look at how it sits on there. This again is gonna go right behind the head of the driver. I think throw the real one in there with all the wires, route them down to the underside of the car, and get all these wires ran finally. All right, so I've gone ahead and installed the final fuse and relay panel in the back of this panel. And then I've done a nice 3/4 inch loom that's gonna go through some grommeted holes to get all these wires, all these bad boys down to the underside of the car to run up to all the 12-volt components. So let's go ahead and get this thing installed. Alright, I just wanted to quickly shoot the front of this while we have this out of here and we could look at all angles of it. Turned out pretty nice. Throwing the cap on is only going to finish it even more. It turned out pretty good. Got it right up here in between that rear wheel and the front driver's seat, as opposed to the rear driver's seat. It's out of sight, out of mind, nice and snug. And I can easily reach that standing just outside of the car to be able to service any fuses and relays. Alright, so we got all of these wires from our fuse and relay panel right behind the driver's seat. Loom is split and we have a few things going. So this one's going back to our drivetrain radiator pump. We got two positives there to turn those on. This one's going to our CHAdeMO connector charge port and our onboard charger. We got power, ground, and CAN bus. For CAN bus channel 2 on the BMS, CAN bus channel 1, and the return of CAN bus channel 1 going out to this loom, which I just kind of have temporarily zip tied to my hoses to make sure that my distance is good on that. And this guy is coming down. That's how it goes to our 102 pin on the side of our rear battery box. Turned out pretty well. We obviously got the final routes to hammer out once the box is in. Do a couple test fits and make sure everything's gonna be nice and open. And we're gonna be able to drop this battery box down whenever anything needs to be serviced, or if they ever wanna upgrade their batteries or change them out. So, anyways, that's it. Now the next task. All right, so now we got some work to do on the back box. We have a whole bunch of batteries, and each of those batteries needs each of their parallel cells to be monitored as far as what their voltage is, so the BMS can make sure that not too much current is being drawn, and the batteries are in good health. We have these awesome mil-spec connectors. We got the receptacle right here. It's gonna be mounted on the box. And then we've got the connector that's gonna take all the leads and take them to the outside of the rear box and run them up to the front box. Then I'm gonna mount this receptacle with its 4 bulbs on the box. All right, so we got our hole drilled here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and mark and mount this panel right here. We actually have a second one that we're gonna do above. This connector that we have down here, we have some actual high voltage components going through this. This is just low current draw cell taps. So it's okay for us to use these circular mil-spec connectors. They're all the same gauge inside of here, and they're just gonna fit really nice. Just 2 plugs right above this in line. All right, so we have one of our connectors drilled with the mounting holes drilled. Now we need to do a second one. This first one's gonna take about half of the cell types that we need to do to the front box, and then we have a second one right here. So this is gonna allow us to have a quick disconnect in order to drop this box down if we ever want to service the relays or fuses that are inside of this box. All right, so we've cut in both of our connectors here on this back box, and now I have about 39 wires per harness that I gotta pin to each of these bulkhead connectors. Then we have the outside that'll just cinch right on there, run the front box, and this whole box is gonna be quickly disconnectable. You can drop it. We have fuses and relays inside of this box that we can service as soon as we're able to drop this box out. And it's also making it possible to upgrade the batteries in the future if we wanted to. So we got some high detail work to do. We got our pre-cut cell tab harness.
That's a lot of wires, bro.
Yep, we got 12 of each color.
So how many is that?
So we got 36 colored wires, 12 of each are a cell group. And they each have a reference ground. So I got 3 black wires and 36 colored wires.
Spaghetti.
Yep.
Somebody touch my spaghetti!
And
So how are you gonna make sense of all this?
So this is 36 of 96 leads that we need to terminate. I've got some heat shrink tubing. I've got each of my negatives and all the way up to 36.
So those are tubes. So they're gonna go on each one of these wires so that you can catalog which wire does what.
I'll put the labels on here, slip this expandable sleeve on it.
What's
And
this?
then
What is this pretty little thing?
This guy, this is what's gonna take our inside wires, put them to the outside of the box, weather tight. So we're gonna go ahead and do our small gauge crimp terminals. All right, but anyways, we'll crimp these on with our manufacturer specific crimp tool. Yeah, this thing's heavy. This thing's like 1.5 pounds. Go ahead and pin them in.
And you cheated. You kind of already did one,
Yeah,
which
I
is
wanted to know how it was gonna turn out.
which is always a smart way to go about it. So as you guys can see here, he's already finished one up, and this is how it's gonna look. Cannon plugs are awesome because it's gonna keep everything weather tight and it's easy to remove. And here's all the wires inside, all labeled already. Looks beautiful. And that other one he's gonna build now is gonna go in this position here. Awesome.
All right, cool. So we got all of these pins crimped and both of the bulkhead connectors plugged into here. So as you can see, turns out pretty good. Got 2 harnesses and their bulkhead connectors, 39 pins each harness. We went ahead and got them in, put some expandable loom over them. Our labels are just inside. I didn't heat shrink because then we can just snip this, zip tie, peel it back and look at the labels if things need to be troubleshot. But it's just going right into our Orion BMS. Things are nice and clean. We'll go ahead and disconnect each of those. I just wanted to make sure that they would fit and the length of the wires and the loom is good. All right, so we've gone ahead and labeled and crimped all these leads. Now I'm gonna go ahead and terminate them into our connector to go on the other side of those bad boys. So this will be the last for this side of the box, and then we got one more connector to do on this side of the box before this thing is ready to be prepped, painted, and thrown into the car. All right, got these guys taken care of. These are the BMS cell taps. Then they're going to mate up with the receptacles that we have installed on the side of the rear box. This will cover 72 of our cell taps. These are gonna run up to the front box and plug into the front batteries so we can monitor the cell voltage of all those batteries.
So is this the male or female side of that connector?
This here is, we got the female pins.
Not that it really matters, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, we got the, you can see right there.
Oh, yep.
Female
Okay,
socket.
so female pin side, and then the male side is the one that I did at Stealth, which is already mounted on the enclosure here, which I'm sure you've shown already.
Oh, yeah.
But, so you guys can see what it looks like, it's pretty sick. It's gonna allow us to remove this box pretty much at will by disconnecting all these connectors, which is sick.
Heck yeah.
Connectors are so badass.
This box is just gonna be able to drop out if you need to service any fuses or relays, or if you wanna, you know, switch out the batteries to 100 pack.
100 pack? Woo! I like the sound of that.
Yep. Yeah, so I've thrown some labels on here. I'm gonna go ahead and slip all these through. You can see I have different lengths, so I'm gonna get all of them about the same length when it's in position. I'll go ahead and snip all these off, pull them out, crimp some pins on them, stick them back in, and this guy's ready to connect to what we did. All right, cool. So we got everything that's coming up from the fuse and relay panel that runs down to the 102 pin. Got them all punched through. I'm about to snip them all at the same length so that they can be heat shrunk and crimped and look nice and pretty. And then of course there's many other wires that are gonna go to the other devices. So we have things that need to go to the controller, things that need to go up front to some of our 12-volt interfaces, and a few other things. So this is probably about half of what we have to do here at this 102 pin. All right, we are doing our final touches to make this thing a quick disconnect so that it can be dropped out. This battery box right here is holding 4 of our modules, but it's also holding our pack fuse, our high voltage component fuses, such as our battery heater, cabin heater, AC compressor, the charge fuses. It's holding our pre-charge fuse, it's holding our pre-charge resistor, it's holding our high voltage contactors, it's holding our actual BMS, and that's it. You know, not that much in here, right? Now, the last thing that is not quick disconnect is actually our CHAdeMO charge port cables. This is a 2-watt cable that's going into a couple of contactors. This is gonna be about 8 feet between this part of the box all the way back to where the CHAdeMO is gonna be mounted. So this can't be a solid cable. We have to have the same kind of disconnect that we have here. This is for our 2-watt cables, breaking the front box from the rear box, as well as going out to the drive unit. So I actually have the housing right here. This is for the 2-gauge cable that we're gonna be connecting to our CHAdeMO charge port. And it's gonna go right here where our CHAdeMO cables are already coming out. So we have all of our 12-volt wires ran from our fuse and relay panel down through to the bottom. As you can see, we got 4 good-sized looms coming off of that. That's a weird angle. There we go. We got 4 looms. This heat shrink that we had on there previously was not big enough. I actually had to route some can lines. One's going to start here. Actually, 2 of them are going to start here. Can line that needs to go out and across over here to our onboard charger. And then we have a second CAN bus that's going to go to our CHAdeMO that has its own CAN bus from the BMS. And that one's going to terminate there. The onboard charger CAN bus is then going to go to the drive unit, and then from the drive unit it's going to come back out again. It's going to go to our Orion Wi-Fi Connect, which is most likely going to be somewhere right above here. And then from that it's going to go back to this loom, and it's going to route down. It's going to go up to the front of the car through our tunnel. And it's going to talk to the BMS thermal expansion up there. And then also there is an RS-232 programming port that we're going to put in the glove box so that we can have a laptop connected to it, and while we're driving or before we go on a test ride, we'll go ahead and connect to it and make sure our parameters are set. All right, so we kind of have all hands on deck right now, kind of helping out. Our box is fully loaded and we got wires that need to go outside of it and they need to be routed around. So what we're doing right now is we have the rear box partially in. We're gonna work to get it all the way in. And I have all of these looms with all these wires that need to connect to all those devices. And I need to know how I can route those. It's not the final time we're putting it in, but we do need to test fit it and be able to plan out our routes for the wires. And it's coming back out and then again, it'll go back in, so.
What do you think, Quinn?
Sick. Just a lot of work.
Just sitting under
We
there.
bought the worst transmission jack, and it's screwing us right now.
This handle. The handle
what is
sits
it,
higher than the
motorcycle
platform of the lift, so.
It's not even meant for automotive. Smack against the machine now.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Snug fit, just the way I like it.
Say about that. There it is.
You gotta...
All right, so this is our back box again, and it's meeting up. I mean, it's higher than the lowest point of this tunnel and the underside of this car. This is a pretty sweet spot for it. So we got it in. I can now see all the clearances I have around it. We got 8 inches back here, a couple of gaps. I mean, we already have some 2-watt and some loom for the high voltage cables running in front, so I know that I have plenty of room. So yeah, now that we know the clearances that we have, there's wiggle room with what's already in place. We have all kinds of looms. Now I can route those, and we can button this up, get it all nice and clean, and get this thing going.
I'm so happy to see this thing coming together. It's been a long time. Very happy to have Will here as well to help because we have a lot of projects and adding his hands and expertise to this has been integral to us making progress.
All right guys, that's gonna do it for today's episode. This is just a preview of the finished work, the organization, the nice wiring that we're gonna do for this project. It's pretty unique. Next week we have some work to do on the back box. See you guys next week, and please comment, like, and subscribe. See you then.